Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai. It's hard to be down on your luck when you're Virginia's first choice for new Nissan and Hyundais, but I need to sell 60 cars this week. Right now, I'll pay you big bucks for your good luck. Bring down any good luck charm you've got, and based on the sale price of the car you choose, I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car this week. Today, your lucky penny is worth plenty, up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car you want. Stop moping and hoping you'll get approved. With my For the People credit approval process, the banks are looking to get lucky and lend to you, even if you've been turned down before. Bring me any good luck charm and I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car today. Hurry, once I get rid of 60 cars, the luck runs out. All offers require bank approval, so call us at 1-800-POHANKA, visit Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai on Route 1 in Fredericksburg, or better yet, log on to TimPohankaForThePeople.com. And when we make a deal, I promise it'll be your lucky day. I'm Tim Pohanka, and I'm a leprechaun for the people.
Don't punish me with brutality.
In case anybody in the world might not know, that was Washington, D.C.'s own Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye went, if we just look out the corner right here from Busboys and Poets, look east, and we will see Cardozo High School, where Marvin Gaye went to high school. My name is Rock Newman, and this is the Rock Newman Show on Saturday, June the 22nd, 2013. And it needs to be the Rock Newman Show every day, because every Saturday that we do the show, it is a spectacular day in Washington, D.C. The weather is today 85 degrees, sun shiny degrees all over Washington, D.C. and the DMV. Speaking of Washington, D.C.'s own, first of all, let me just say very quickly how happy I am to be broadcasting my show from Busboys and Poets Restaurant. It is a emerging, iconic brand that is all about bringing folks together from every stripe, every creed, every color, from every corner of the world, and it is a tribe. They refer to themselves as having a tribe, and a tribe brings in all stripes. There is the attempt here at Busboys and Poet in a very conscious way to lift our consciousness and to change the world one person at a time. My first guest from Busboys and Poets is Mayoral Candidate, the longest-serving council member in the Washington, D.C. City Council, Mr. Jack Evans. Jack Evans, welcome to the Rock Newman Show.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much for coming out early this morning. I know you and the other council persons have a very busy schedule today, and that you're stopping by, it is a treat and an honor, and I thank you again. Because we're going to be pretty fast-paced this morning, Jack, I want to kind of just jump right into things.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've thrown your hat into the ring to become the mayor of Washington, D.C. Do you do that because you feel as if the current mayor has not done the job that needs to be done to serve the citizens of Washington?
No, I don't, actually. I think Vince Gray is actually doing a good job as mayor. I've known Vince for 25 years now. We go back to when I first got elected in 1991. He was the Human Services Director. We've worked on a number of things then. When he was chairman of the council, I was vice chairman. We worked together then, and even up to today. So I like the mayor, and I think he's doing a good job. I'm running for mayor because I can bring the experience, the knowledge, and really the leadership qualities to build upon the success that we have turned Washington, D.C. into. As you know, Rock, this city is nothing like it was in 1991 when we were really in a free fall. We've worked hard to stabilize and really improve our finances, development across the city. It's the rival of any city in America. Crime is way down. So we've made a lot of progress, but there's still a lot of people in the city who are not benefiting from that progress. And I believe I have the skills to make sure we can all benefit.
Jack, as you talk about the progress, one of the things that there's been a big deal made about is that the city now is operating in the black, if you will, that there is a tremendous surplus. That's clearly acknowledged.
Yes.
How would you suggest that Jack Evans' administration would handle a surplus like exists now that would better serve the residents than the current administration?
Well, what we have to do is to use our resources, our money that we're spending now, largely in our human services and education clusters, more efficiently. It's not that we're not spending a lot of money in the areas that really, really are important. It's that the money we're spending is not getting to the people who should get the services. I talk about our children in school.
Why is that?
Well, I think it's because it has taken a long time for the government, the mid-90s government that was so dysfunctional, to become a more service-oriented government. I talk about the schools. You know, we spend more money per child than any school system in America. We rival New York, go back and forth. And yet our children still get a very substandard education. Now, why is that? Why can't we fix a school system with only 80,000 children in it? And we spend 40% of our budget in our human service area, Rock, and we still have a number of people in this town who are suffering. And is it that we're paying people to take care of people and they're not doing their job? Is the accountability? All of that is what we really need to focus on, and that's what an Evans administration would focus on.
Jack, obviously, you know, it's cliche-ish when one says, you know, the children are our future. It's a cliche, but it's very, very true.
Absolutely.
The educational system in the District of Columbia, for some time now, I think would be fairly criticized and characterized as having said it has failed our children. Now, there are a myriad of reasons. I'm a big proponent of self-reliance and that the family structure should be much more involved. However, this is an educational system. People pay their taxes. We'll talk later about taxation without representation.
Yep.
That's another core issue,
huge.
issue of mine.
Yeah.
But can you talk to me and talk to the listeners of the Rock Newman Show about what a Jack Evans administration and how a Jack Evans administration would help make the school system significantly better to prepare the leaders for our future?
Yeah, absolutely. And they start with the premise now that the mayor has control of the school system, a very controversial decision made back 4 or 5 years ago. And now there is accountability in the mayor's office. What I would do is to make sure, and we've started along this course, the buildings, you always remember, the buildings were falling down, kids can't learn because the buildings are falling down. We've taken that issue off the table and have renovated or in the process of renovating most of the buildings. Hiring and keeping...
Now, renovating buildings, but also closing many schools.
And that's a very controversial issue as to whether the schools should be closed, and if they are closed, should charter schools get to move into the vacant D.C.
And what's your position on that?
I believe we've closed enough school buildings, and the buildings we have are the ones that we really need to make sure work for the children in the neighborhoods. That's where I am right now on that. And the ones we have, I think we have about 16 in surplus, are the ones that charter schools should have the first opportunity to move into, and to have the system. And Rock, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but the big issue in the school system as we go forward is to reconcile the charter school system, which now has 45% of our children, with the traditional DCPS system.
Right.
And there are issues that have to be addressed. Charters, as you know, don't have to take neighborhood children, where DCPS does. And so how do you reconcile these two programs when they're really at odds with each other? The next mayor is going to have to be able to do that. And the next mayor is going to have to be able to provide, going to your point about how I would address our children,
yes,
wraparound services. I, as you know, have 3 children, triplets, and my wife passed away when they were 6. So I was kind of a single dad trying to deal with this. And what I learned is what happens in school from 8 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon is very important. But what happens from 3 in the afternoon to 8 o'clock the next morning is even more important.
Right.
You cannot send a child to school tired, hungry, without any structure, and hope that that child can learn. And so the city has an obligation to help those children and the parents in that time period when they're not in school.
How are we going to do that?
It's wraparound services. It's using our Department of Human Services to have counselors, to have, I can use the word tutors, but again, what I learned is when a child gets out of school till 6:30 at night, that's the most important time when they do their homework and have something to eat, because other than that, after that, you lose them. And that's an obligation the city has, whether to take children to rec centers, keep them in school. How do we address that time period when that child needs to be focused on doing homework and things
So
of that
let me
nature?
ask you, because I really like that idea.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very good, a very functional, a very common sense idea.
Yeah.
Is any of that being done now?
It's starting to be done, and in some respects, we have some, I guess, more in the charter school area. The kids go to school till 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, not in traditional DCPS, and I think that's the reform that's going to have to take place. But it's a big deal. If you're going to ask teachers to stay later, you have a union issue, and how do you deal with that? So it's a comprehensive approach that all of us are going to have to take if we're going to be able to put that wraparound service in place, and not just give it lip service, to make sure, and I'm not talking about just having a study hall where everybody sits in study hall. That doesn't work.
Right.
You need to have people who are actively engaged with the children to make sure they're getting their homework done and know how to do it.
And do you feel as if, you know, the council, is the council prepared, and this current mayor, certainly if you're the mayor, you're obviously expressing that you're a proponent of that. Again, it's hard to get away from that particular issue when you look at the dropout rate and the failure rate of our students today. That, you know, do you feel as if that's the number one issue confronting the city now, or what is, in your estimation, the number one challenge facing the city that you're prepared and able to address?
Yeah, it is the number one issue. If you can fix the school system, and then you can't do this overnight, but if you can make sure that every child who goes into our school system comes out with a quality education, has the ability to go on to a secondary school or get a job, all the other areas fall down. Your crime rates go down. Your human services needs go down. Everything that you're addressing in other components of your government then go down. And Rock, the frustrating part about this is we are a small city. We only have 600,000 people here. We only have 80,000 kids in our school system, as I mentioned, and we have an $11 billion budget. We have the resources to address this. We just need the leadership, skill, and knowledge to make it happen.
Can you, on sticking with that subject, can you identify for us what you would suggest happens with the budget specifically to address the educational failures that exist now?
Well, the budget is fine. I keep going back to that. We're spending an appropriate amount of money in our education system, as we now talk about. It goes
but how
towards,
do you make that much more efficient and effective?
Well, it goes towards working with the chancellor and working with the school administration, starting with principals, identifying, and I think the chancellor is trying to do this. Do we have good principals in every one of our schools? Do we have good teachers in all of our schools? Do we have the appropriate amount of schools that we talked about? And if we do, are the resources there to make sure that the children have that opportunity to learn? Then you shift over to the human services area and say, are the wraparound services that I'm talking about being provided in the fashion that is going to help our children? So it's a management issue more than it is a resource issue.
Jack, there has been, D.C. has, to use a boxing adage, received several black eyes in the last few years. Some of its city councilmen have been charged with corruption, been convicted of corruption, serving time. Recently, Michael Brown has been charged. As a matter of fact, he's pleaded
guilty.
He's pleading guilty
or whatever it is. Yeah.
How do you intend to, if your bid for the mayor's office is successful, how do you intend to address those issues and help clean up city government, where you can, where the residents of the District of Columbia can have greater confidence that their elected officials are not for sale?
Okay. In an Evans administration, I would have a no-tolerance policy for any kind of corruption at all. If someone is doing anything that they shouldn't be doing, taking money, bribery, any of that kind of stuff, if I hear in some of our agencies people have to get paid off to get the job done, everyone has a no-tolerance policy and would be fired. On the elected official, it's a little bit harder in that area. That I would certainly challenge anyone on the council to behave in a fashion that goes above and beyond the average behavior. You are a representative of the city. Now, having said that, Rock, it's hard in the situations that you talked about to say to somebody, I mean, what are you doing, taking a bribe for your office? I mean, that's... It not only is it illegal, it's just ridiculous that someone in that situation would do that. Or my colleague Tommy Thomas, or others who have found themselves in that situation. It's hard. There's no way of legislating honesty. There's no way of embarrassing honesty. You just have to say to people, if you're in these jobs with public trust, you have to behave yourself.
Jack, I know that there's been in some circles, there's been some criticism that that you've represented some interest in the city, or your law firm, the law firm that you're with, has represented interest that you have had dealings with, that you've voted on. What's your reaction to those criticisms?
It's absolutely false. My law firm has never represented any entity in this city that I've ever voted on. They've never represented any interest, period. And there was an issue about Marriott that kept coming up, which
Yes.
is probably you're referring to.
Yes.
My law firm went to the extraordinary level, which law firms do not do, of issuing a press release or making a statement that Patton Boggs never represented Marriott ever. And yet that rumor still persists out there.
It is.
It's false.
It is out there, because
There's no other
when I
way
said
of,
Jack Evans was coming on today, more than one person brought that up.
Never.
Jack,
Have we ever represented Marriott?
in the 30s.
And Rock, one last thing.
Yeah.
Marriott doesn't own the Convention Center Hotel. It's being built by Quadrangle and owned by Quadrangle.
Right.
All they do is manage the hotel.
property. Right.
So
right.
the facts surrounding that, it's like an urban myth that you can't get rid of.
There will be a time when I will want you to come on for the entire hour.
Sure.
There's a lot that we can talk
Oh,
about.
I know.
In the
Absolutely.
last 30 seconds that we have, tell the residents of Washington, D.C. and the rest of the world is watching on the Rock
Yeah, no,
Newman
that's
Show
great, yeah.
why you'd be the best mayor of at least the three candidates that are running there. And I think there is the expectation that Vince Gray will probably run also. Tell us why you would be best.
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to say to the other candidates, congratulations. And I have run for mayor before, as you remember, back in 1998. It's a grueling process. Anyone who puts themselves out there deserves a lot of credit. So I say that to everyone else involved. I believe that I would make the best mayor, though, because of the experience, knowledge, and leadership that I bring to the job. I've been on this council for 22 years and have been involved with virtually every major and minor decision made in this government that has taken our city from where it was to where it is today, and have shown I have the fortitude to make decisions that are very difficult. Do you remember the convention center, the Verizon Center, the controversy surrounding the baseball stadium? If one does not show leadership skills and stand up in the face of adversity for very difficult decisions, you can't be a good mayor in this town. And that's what I bring to the table, and the skill set to, as I said, bring this prosperity that we are enjoying in this town to everyone in this town. Because that's what's going to make Washington, D.C. the fabulous city that we all want it to be. And I know I can do that.
Best of luck, Jack.
Okay, Rock,
Thanks for
it's
coming
great
on the
to
Rock
see you
Newman
again.
Show.
Thank you.
We'll
I look
be right
forward to
back
coming
after these brief messages.
Hello to all my friends in the DMV. I am Rock Newman from the Rock Newman Show. I want to tell you about the MGM Grand National Harbor, the most exciting project to come to the District, Maryland, or Virginia in quite some time. You're going to have great fun. Come on down, support this project with all you have. It is going to be wonderful for the area. We're going to increase our tax base. We're going to get funding for the police department, for ambulance, for fire, for education. It is really a project that is going to benefit our area. Folks, we want to support in a very strong DMV kind of way this great project from the MGM Grand National Harbor.
Welcome back to the Rock Newman Show from the Langston Hughes Room at Bus Boys and Poets at 14th and V Street, Northwest Washington, D.C. Folks out there in Webland, and all around the city, and anyone listening around the world. Let me tell you something. When you come to Washington, D.C., one of the things you want to do is you want to come to have breakfast, lunch, or dinner at Bus Boys and Poets. It is just a wonderful, wonderful place to come to have a great meal, feed your soul, feed your mind, and feed your bellies also. In this 9 o'clock hour, I have the good fortune of having the three mayoral candidates who are seeking to become mayor in Washington, D.C. Jack Evans just left us here, and now I have with me, and I want to welcome to the Rock Newman Show, Tommy Wells.
Good morning, Rock.
Council member from Ward 6. Tommy, thank you. Welcome to the Rock Newman Show.
I think the last time we saw each other was the Glenn Harris tribute, so it's good to see you again.
That's exactly right, up at the Blackburn Center at Howard University. Glenn has been a figure in this town for a very long time and has made a very positive difference in a lot of people's lives.
You told some stories that probably shouldn't be on radio.
That's correct. It probably should not be. It's like the Vegas thing. That's like the Las Vegas
That's
thing.
right.
What happens over there, we probably should leave over there. Tommy, speaking of making a difference in people's lives, why do you want to be mayor of Washington, D.C.?
Well, first, Rock, thank you for having me on the show. The reason I want to be mayor for the city is that, A, this is the greatest city in the world. And
I'm going to say amen to that. Can we get an amen from the live audience out here? Washington, D.C. is the greatest city in the world. Can we get an amen? Amen.
And the vision I lay out for the city is that we have, number one, a great elementary school in walking distance for every single family in the city. That, number two, we can cut the number of crimes committed by juveniles and re-engage our teenagers in the city. I think we can cut it in half in
How are we going to do that?
2 years.
How are we going to do it?
Well, number one, just like when Marion said that every kid should have an summer job, I think every kid in D.C. should have an after-school job. I think also that we know that we have neighborhoods where if we put enough services in there, connect the youth back to their families, back to their schools, back to their community, that we can reduce the amount of crimes. But I know that also, I have a long background in social work, working in the child protection system, where we've been able to make some substantial differences with families. But we have to do it, Rock. We have to re-engage our teenagers back into our community. And I think that if we took every government agency and said, it is part of your mission to engage youth in what you do. I don't care if it's DMV, Office of the Elderly, everybody can have a job that's part of really re-engaging our teenagers in the city. Third thing is we have to create the 21st century transit system and bring transit equity east of the river so that we've got, it's one thing to have a job, but it's another thing to get to it. And so I believe that we need a transit system that serves everyone in a 21st century Washington, D.C.
Tommy, you just made a pretty bold statement that you think and you want as a Tommy Wells administration, you are going to put forth an initiative that, did I hear you this correctly, that every school student has a job or possibility of having a job after school? Absolutely.
That's how you're mentored. That's why you don't need to knock someone in the head to get money, because you got a job. And it's really the pathway to re-engage our teenagers in positive behavior, but it's also a way to engage the family and all that if your teenager has after-school programs. But we've got so many new employers in the city. Through private partnerships and through our government, we can be sure that every teenager has an after-school job in D.C.
I love big ideas. I try to stay out of the weeds, but let's get in the weeds on that a little bit. Every school kid having a job after school, that's a laudable, man. Oh man, I love it. Amen, amen. Can we get into the weeds, though, as to how you're going to make that happen? Okay, we have 80,000 school kids. Some of them won't be able to work because it's elementary school. So what you're talking about, I suspect, is somewhere 14, 15 years on.
Sure.
So let's just say that's 30%. Let's say that's 40%. So 40%, that's 32,000 kids. How are we going to put those 32,000 kids to work? What's going to be the system and the process to make that happen?
I'm sure there was a time when Marion said, we're going to have every young person in the city have a summer job.
Tommy has mentioned Marion twice. And for those who might not know, you're talking about the Washington, D.C. mayor for life, Marion Barry, who really
doesn't know that.
Who really has his legacy still, in part, is the Summer Youth Jobs Program.
Absolutely. And what adults will tell you that came through that program, that is where they learned their job skills. That's what gave them money for the summer and kept them out of trouble. And it was a bold vision then. And I think doing the same thing for after school with the same criteria, with the same programs, that it's clear that we can do it. And we certainly have the staff that put together the summer jobs. Let's have them work all year round and have put together the after-school jobs too.
Okay, so now you're talking about jobs, which, great idea. I guess there's a question, as you were sitting here when I was talking to Jack Evans, we both believe that the school system in Washington, D.C. has failed our students for the last few decades. So you're talking about jobs after school. What are you going to do to improve the school system?
Well, In Ward 6, I think what we can do in Ward 6, we can do across the city. In Ward 6, every single elementary school has a waiting list to get in, and that we're adding 3 more elementary schools. The most important thing about a school is where do parents want to send their children. It's not all about test scores. Nobody knows the test scores of Sidwell Friends, where the president sends his children, but people would love to send their children there. It's about having a school that parents trust to educate their children. And I know we can do that in Ward 7, 8, 5, and the rest of the city because we've done it in Ward 6. And you really start with asking parents, what do you want? What do you need to be able to trust us to educate your child? And that's where you start, not where you say, I know what's best for you, and you ought to have this, and you ought to have that. It's about asking parents, what do you want? So I did that in Ward 6, and we can do that across the city.
You asked the parents what do they want. How much engagement did you get?
A lot of engagement. When I saw that the parents at Potomac Gardens were sending their children they wouldn't go to Tyler Elementary School, which is right there next to their where they lived. So I went and met with parents at Potomac Gardens and said, what do you need at Tyler? What is it that you need to trust Tyler to educate your child? And one of the things they said is they wanted honesty, that their children were coming home with A's and B's and then find out that they're testing below basic when we did the testing scores, and so they didn't trust the school. Lost trust and sent their children somewhere else. They also like another language. And now Tyler has Spanish immersion. Tyler's now full. Tyler has 500 students in it. But we do that by starting with the parents. And don't assume just because you're poor, you don't have an opinion about what's best for your child. Everybody has an opinion about what's best for your child. And in D.C., you have so many school choices. Our parents are making those choices anyway. So you have to start with the parents.
Has Vince Gray been a good mayor?
Vince Gray, for the most part, has set out a vision for the city that I, for the most part, agree with. I do think that we've got areas like contracting where it's like someone just poured molasses over the government, slowed down. I oversee the fire department and the other agencies. Fire department doesn't have enough equipment because they couldn't get the contracts out the door. That just makes no sense. We've got the money to do it. But I think in general, Vince Gray has the city on the right course. But I do think it matters that he ran a campaign with an illegal shadow campaign. We're the nation's capital. We've got a long history sometimes of problems. And I think that that you just can't ignore that. I've got a friend, Tom Gore, who's facing prison time right now. And I think that's unacceptable. He was not involved in politics before this. And it is just, I think it all troubles our heart.
You said Vince Gray ran a campaign, and it had an illegal campaign associated with it. Is that right? That
and, the other, situation with Suleiman Brown, with payments to him to keep him in the race and then giving him a job he wasn't qualified for.
So is it your position and your thought that Vince Gray was aware of the shadow campaign?
Well, if he's not aware, I know that I'm aware of almost every dollar spent in my campaign. I know that I choose people, and I get reports. Sometimes it's early in the morning. Just tell me, how we're spending the money and how much is coming in. If he didn't know, Rock, come on. You know that we've got a history in the city that this isn't the first time this has happened. Maybe the first time that it's been caught, but I don't think this is the first time this has happened. And let me also say that the Suleiman Brown issue was embarrassing for the city, and apparently he must have been promised a job. It apparently seems that everything else around that's become true. And it's had a lot of casualty, and we're going to see a lot of people we know and friends we know and trust that will continue to be hit by this. Jeffrey Thompson at the time was a upstanding citizen in the city, had the largest contract in the city, and now he's probably going to be facing quite a bit of prison time. This is not done. It's embarrassing. It's the one thing that will set our city back as a corrupt city. Now, I'm not going to run just on a negative message. I will run on a positive message of a great city that re-engages its youth, has neighborhood schools, and a first-class transit system. I'm not going to run, but I will run with integrity. I will not take one corporate dollar in my campaign. There will not be
Can we write that down? Can we write that down?
Please write that down.
Tommy Wells, mayoral run, not $1 from a corporation.
If your name's not on the check, don't give it to me.
So as an individual.
That's right, Rock. I can get a check from Rock Newman, but not Rock Newman Enterprises. Your name must be on that check. And no, limited liability.
You can't even get a check from Rock Newman unless my wife out there authorizes.
I like that.
Tommy, you were very visible a couple of weeks ago. You took some hits you expressed some concern about EMS. And you went out and you said that at the particular time that you went out, there were only 2, I think, or 3 ambulances available for the entire city. That was disputed. Some said that was political grandstanding. Your response?
Well, I'm disappointed that anybody would. I mean, 3 is 3.
And is that what it was?
Is 3. So 3 ambulances only in Northwest. 3 ambulances were available to the city at 10:30 in the morning when I was there. So 3 is 3. You can call it political grandstanding to point it out. My job is oversight. You have to trust me that I will put a spotlight on things like emergency services that you pay for. So if either you or I fall out right now, that the capacity is here to reach us and transport us to a hospital. And so
on that particular point, at Good Hope Road and Alabama Avenue.
That's right.
That particular intersection. Your position is when you went there that day, if there had been an accident, someone had fallen out in the street that particular day, there were only 3 ambulances, and the 3 of them were in the northwest quadrant of the city.
That's right.
So what's been the explanation from EMS about why that was the case?
There has not been a good explanation. And frankly, Rock, I think everybody knows me now that I don't care what it is, I will tell the truth. And that is the truth. So there were 3. Nobody disputes there were only 3 ambulances up in Northwest. Now, in unpacking this, our ambulances spend an extraordinary amount of time waiting at the hospitals in order for the hospital to take responsibility for the patient. And so a lot of I think we had about 14 ambulances that day were just sitting at hospitals, some up to an hour. And then we had about 15 ambulances that were transporting people. And then a couple ambulances that were, being turned over in the sense that they transported someone, they were sterilizing the ambulance and getting it back out. We should have 39 ambulances available, every day in the city. And so there's not an acceptable excuse. We have underhired. We don't have the number of paramedics. We don't have the number of personnel that we are authorized for. We have fully funded our fire department emergency medical services, and they've not been able to hire the staff they need. And then it was only a routine question. Give me a list of all your equipment and vehicles so I can be sure we have the money to replace them when they get old. They gave me a list that was absolutely false. So how can we trust that that we've got the equipment and the ambulances we need? So eventually they brought somebody in and said, okay, we're going to do a real count now. Now, these are big red fire trucks. They're not hard to count. And so they brought in a consultant and paid the consultant to count them for them and tell us how old they are. And so I'm on it. I'm grandstanding. You can say whatever you want.
I'll tell you what,
I am on the job.
On that particular point, I mean, emergency services is a vital part of city services. So
right.
I would encourage you to stay on that like a pit bull. I want to ask you a 2-part question as we wrap up here. We got about a minute and a half. Who in politics that has preceded you would you most like to fashion your administration after, 1? And 2, why are you uniquely qualified to serve the citizens of the District of Columbia better than anyone else?
Well, I think that there's been good, parts of every mayor. And going back to Walter Washington, who brought a tremendous amount of integrity to the job and really kind of set the standard for, the stature of a mayor. Mm-hmm. And I think that Marion Barry, initially when he ran, he brought in a lot of disparate groups that were marginalized. He brought in gay and lesbians into the fold when no one else would. And I was very proud that he did that of our city. And then you had Sharon Pratt Kelly, who ran on.
He also expanded the middle class. I mean, what he did for African Americans.
Absolutely. And we talked about the summer
right,
jobs,
right.
Other things. He did many things like
right.
that. I agree. And Marion, even today, is one of the strongest environmentalists on the council. A lot of people don't give him credit for that, but on almost every piece of environmental legislation, he says it doesn't go far enough.
As in, he doesn't like a whole lot of smoke around him and that sort of thing. It's a great environmentalist.
Audience.
Great environmentalist. Okay, I got it.
Sharon Pratt Kelly ran on, cleaning up government.
Yeah.
And then, and certainly Anthony Williams, one of the few leaders in the country as a mayor that could both plan and implement at the same time.
Yeah.
He did great planning, and he did great implementation. Yeah. And then Adrian had his strengths. He was a just do it kind of mayor. He said, I don't want to hear any of the other things, just do it. And I think Vince Gray, one of the things I like that Vince Gray has done is he laid out a sustainable plan for a sustainable city. It's a great plan. Now we got to implement it. And so I think there's great pieces to every mayor that we've had in the city. Now, why me? Number one, that I bring a lot of integrity to this office. Everybody has seen that I'm willing to. I was the first one to investigate a chair of the city council as just a regular city council member because of misuse of funds around the SUV, and the Lincoln Navigator. And then I certainly have a strong sense of equity for the city. When I oversaw transportation and the circulator, the cheapest bus and the best bus system didn't run east of the river. I moved the circulator from Ward 6 over to Ward 7 and 8 into the rest of the city. The other thing is I really lead with a vision. A neighborhood school in walking distance to every child and family, a public transit equity for the 21st century, and that we re-engage our teenagers and we can cut the crimes committed by teenagers in half in 2 years.
That would be a good thing. Tommy Wells, thank you,
buddy.
I will invite you also back for an entire hour. There's a lot more we could talk about.
Well, clearly we're going to have to involve your wife if there's
coming on the
any
Rock Newman Show.
contribution.
Be well.
Thank you, Rock.
Folks, we will return in just a few brief moments.
Pohanka from Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai. It's hard to be down on your luck when you're Virginia's first choice for new Nissan and Hyundais, but I need to sell 60 cars this week. Right now, I'll pay you big bucks for your good luck. Bring down any good luck charm you've gotten based on the sale price of the car you choose. I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car this week. Today, your lucky penny is worth plenty, up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car you want. Stop moping and hoping you'll get approved. With my For the People credit approval process, the banks are looking to get lucky and lend to you, even if you've been turned down before. Bring me any good luck charm and I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car today. Hurry, once I get rid of 60 cars, the luck runs out. All offers require bank approval, so call us at 1-800-POHANKA, visit Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai on Route 1 in Fredericksburg, or better yet, log on to timpohankaforthepeople.com. And when we make a deal, I promise it'll be your lucky day. I'm Tim Pohanka, and I'm a leprechaun for the people.
Folks, welcome back to the third segment of this first hour of the Rock Newman Show from Busboys and Poets at 14th and V Street, Northwest Washington, D.C. A just fabulous place. A little later in the show, I'm going to talk about my philosophy, my life philosophy, as I've gotten a few gray hairs here. And that philosophy is, let me say quickly, is we are one. From many different corners of the world, many different stripes, many colors, many eye colors, hair texture, shades, and all the rest, religions, but ultimately we are one. And this place here, Busboys and Poets, certainly fosters that concept and has from its inception in 2005. Its owner and founder, Andy Shalal, is a gentleman who I have just incredible respect for, and I'm honored to be sitting on the stage in the Langston Hughes room at Busboys and Poets. And I'm also honored to have with me in this hour the third mayoral candidate whose hat has been tossed into the ring. She's the third today, but as she just corrected me, the first to throw that hat in the ring, to step out there in a bold way. Ward 4 City Council woman, Muriel Bowser. Muriel, welcome to the Rock Newman Show.
Thanks, Rock. Thanks for having me.
It's
always a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much for coming. I told the other two council people that at some point I'd have to invite them on for an hour. I think that might only be fair. I will put the word out that you've already been for an hour, and certainly at the end of that hour we had so much more to talk about.
Absolutely.
So thanks for coming back, joining us here at Busboys and Poets. Before you leave, if you get a chance, have one of the, if not the best breakfasts in all of the District, Maryland, and Virginia.
Well, I'm looking forward to that, and I'm also looking forward to Busboys in Tacoma, D.C. Andy is going to open another location in our neck of the woods, and it's these type of small business people that we know employ district residents that give the city the texture and the diversity that we love.
What's the biggest problem facing Washington, D.C. right now? What's the biggest problem, and what makes you qualified to solve it?
I think the biggest problem is school equity. You know, when I started this campaign, and we
Tell me
talked,
what that means, school
what,
equity.
what it means is we do have a lot of great things going for us in our city, and a lot of people certainly have helped us get to this point. But as I go around in wards and each block and neighborhoods, we were in Ward 7 yesterday, walking on Branch Avenue in a beautiful neighborhood. You want to know what people were talking about? Whether they were 30 years old or 60 years old? Schools.
Yeah. Yes.
Schools. They were saying, Bowser, we're here in Ward 7 and we have to leave our neighborhoods to get a chance to get a quality education. Here we are with a lot of leadership and a lot of talk, yet we're in a ward where we have more school closures than anybody. So what are we going to do about that? It's not an easy problem, but it's one, if we're going to be a great city, it doesn't matter if we have a lot of cranes in the air. It doesn't matter if 1,000 people are moving to our city month after month. If the people that live here don't have a chance to prosper.
If they don't have a chance.
If they don't have a chance.
If they don't have a chance to give our kids a great future. To me, that's the central issue.
That's the central
issue that must be grappled with. How are you going to make it better?
Well, this is what I know, Rock. In the last couple of years, we haven't made any bold steps. So if I can point to the only thing in 2 years that we've done for public schools is to announce a closure plan, then that's no good. That's no balance for the future. And so one thing I'm very clear about is we have a great feeder. Part of the residents of Ward 4 can go to Deal and Wilson. But we have to have more than one Deal and Wilson all across the District of Columbia. So whether you live in the western part of the city, the middle part of the city like us, or the eastern part of the city, you have to have access to a great feeder. And so that's a great elementary school, a great middle school, and a great high school. I think that we're going to have to make some tough decisions, bold decisions around how we fund our children at schools. So that means we may have to enhance how we fund our schools. So the most challenged feeders are getting the most attention.
Enhance it, increase the budget, spend the budget more effectively and efficiently?
I think we have to do both. We have to spend more effectively and efficiently so that we are moving and that we're focusing on our most challenged feeders. We have the concept that equity across our whole system, but it may mean that some schools need more. Some feeders need more. And if we are, like you said, we are one, that means I care about the east side as much as I care about the western part of the city. And if we want those children to have a chance, we have to really be smarter about how we educate them.
Break down the process, the failure, as to why Ward 7 and Ward 8 does not have a school that is equal to a Deal in the far northwest quadrant.
But it's not just Ward 7 and Ward 8.
I understand.
It's Ward 4 and Ward 5 too.
I just want to pick those. If we could just focus on that, because I kind of want to understand what the problem is as to why it doesn't exist in Ward 7 or Ward 8 and the others, and what you can do about it to change it.
Well, we have to attract families back to those schools, and they have to have confidence in those schools. In this city, and I just saw our champion on the Hill walk in the room, when she was in D.C. public schools at the great Dunbar Senior High School.
When you say champion on the Hill, that just makes me think you must be talking about Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton in the house.
You got to recognize her when she walks in. Gotta recognize Eleanor. Eleanor had a big week too.
Yes,
she had a
did.
big week for us, so
Yes,
we want to thank her for all she does. But in this city, for as long as I can remember, it's been the notion that you had to travel west to get a chance to get a good education, and so people have been leaving their neighborhoods. And when they leave their neighborhoods, you have your most active parents taking all their expertise and activism with them. It's so important that we have all of our families that can just put all the pressure that is needed on the school to make the school better. I always tell people there's really no silver bullet at Murch or Lafayette. You know what makes it work? Families that sit on those schools, on the principal and on all the teachers to make sure that they're delivering a quality education. We also know that those larger schools attract more resources. So if I have 600 kids at Lafayette and 1,200 kids at Deal, they can offer every type of program that's available that attracts those parents. So the city has to step in and say, if parents want 3 different languages, parents want arts, if parents want these after-school activities and we don't have the number of students that will support it, we have to step in to make sure that they're also offered in the feeders across the city, in the middle of the city, in the eastern part of the city that are most challenged. Otherwise, families are well within their rights to expect to be able to go to the Western schools.
You know, there are many joys and thrills that are attendant to gentrification. More upscale families moving in neighborhoods, and just keeping it real here on the Rock Newman Show. Oftentimes, what we're talking about there is sort of white, middle class, upper class, whites that are moving into neighborhood that are, I don't know if the term is proper to say displacing or certainly replacing black neighborhoods. Cortland Malloy used the term, you know, sort of myopic twits that don't really have a feel for D.C. There's a lot of joy, there's a lot more revenue, like tax base is expanded, but there's a lot of pain in the gentrification process also. What would a Muriel Bowser administration do to help those who have been longtime residents here who might not be able to quite compete economically to keep their properties?
Well, this is what I know about this town, Rock. You know, my family's been here for generations, so we know a thing or two about how the city has changed. My mother grew up in Foggy Bottom. It was much different then.
Yeah.
My father grew up in Leadroit Park. It was much different then. And so one thing that tells all of us is nothing stays the same. It's going to get better, or it's going to get worse. And all of us enjoy the investment that's happened in our city over these decades. But all of us also are committed. I think when I talk to Washingtonians, they love our diversity. They love the richness of our neighborhoods. They love the small businesses and the big businesses. They love to be able to walk to grocers. They love that we have become a safer city. They love that we have better park spaces and services. So all of those things are a good thing. But what the government has to do is be very intentional with our policies about how we protect that diversity. The market won't protect it. The market will not say that we like to have senior citizens, we like to have young families. What the market says is we like to have the people that can pay the most. So what I focused on the last 6 years of the council especially is making sure we have policies for our seniors to keep them in their houses. Mm-hmm. The best age in place program is to help a senior stay in their house. So we've done different things with our property taxes so more seniors can qualify.
Give me an example of what you've initiated to try to help that, in that process.
I have a bill called the Age in Place Bill. We in the District of Columbia, and we can thank Marion Barry during his time, that says senior citizens pay half of their property tax bill.
You and the 2 previous candidates have evoked the name of Marion Barry. Be careful, Marion will come back and run again.
Or he could just pick a young, energetic candidate to support.
The best looking amongst the crew, and I don't have any apologies for having said that.
Let's just go with that option. But what it is, if your tax bill, for example, was $4,000, you would pay $2,000. Mm-hmm. So what we've been able to do this year is to expand the number of people who qualify for that tax break. Another thing that we were
I would do that if I were a senior citizen.
If you were a senior citizen and make less.
Ain't no senior citizen.
Yeah, if you were a senior citizen, you have that.
You wouldn't talk about present company excluded.
Present company excluded, but hopefully we'll get there.
Yes.
If we're lucky. And so the next thing that we did was make sure there was more money in our housing modernization program, and that's important. So we have a lot of seniors who are living in homes that are falling down around them.
Right.
They need new windows, new doors. They need to be more energy efficient. So we put more money in those programs so they can age in place. For young families, it's also important to have families in the district. Another great mayor, Tony Williams, set out a goal for 100,000 new residents in the District of Columbia, including families. If we want our schools to work, we have to have kids in them. So we need to be able to attract families. Congresswoman Norton has been so helpful to us and say, you want to buy a home in the District of Columbia, we're going to give you a $5,000 tax credit. Now, we got to stand with her to help us get that back, because that attracts families to the district. I got that tax credit. I remember I was able to buy a whole house full of furniture because of that tax credit. And that also helped me make the decision to live in the district. You want to keep young families, though, you got to fix the schools.
Yes.
They got to be able to afford housing and afford a quality education for their children.
How do we make the city better? Schools. Has Vince Gray been a good mayor?
I think certainly what residents around the District of Columbia have told me as we've gotten around is that they want more focused leadership, attention on the big issues, attention on neighborhood issues, and they want to have the full attention of the mayor on schools. So certainly I think in the last couple of years we've been able to advance in continuing this kind of pipeline of development that we've enjoyed in the District of Columbia. And I think Mayor Gray has also put a number of plans on the table that we hope will bear fruit.
So was that good, yes or no, to be having been
It was,
a good mayor?
we'll see.
So the jury's out?
Jury's out.
Okay. We have about a minute and 20 seconds.
Yep.
Tell my listening audience here in the room and watching around the world why Muriel Bowser would be the best person to lead the city, the nation's capital, in the next term, come 2014?
Well, I appreciate that question, and certainly that is something we've been talking about for certainly the last 12 weeks, but people have been talking to me about it for longer than that. What they're telling me is in the district, while we have all of these great things going for us, we also want to have a sense of pride again in our city, a sense of pride in our leadership and a sense of pride in our government. People want to make sure, and they've looked at my record in Ward 4, that I'm delivering on the promises that we made: more economic development, more housing opportunities, more jobs, safer streets, better educational opportunities for our families, better public spaces. They also want a mayor that's going to hold the agencies accountable, visible leadership. One thing that I have been certainly distressed by is we haven't in the last couple of years attracted the best and brightest talents, the biggest ideas to run our city. So right now, and what our campaign is about, Rock, is not about just 2013. Because we're doing okay in 2013. Our campaign is about the future. What is D.C. going to be like and look like in 2025? How are we going to operate in 2040? So how are we going to get to a world-class education system? I set the goal of making our city the most age-friendly city in the world, the best city to do business, for small businesses especially. How are we going to get there? How are we going to invest $26 billion in public transit, or $1 billion in streetcar, fix our water and sewer, and fix our electric system? That's what our campaign is about. It's about the future. And I think that, and I know all the guys running, and I generally like them all too. But I don't think that their ideas or their track records tell me that they're for our future.
Good luck with your future.
Thank you, Rock.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
Look for you to come back on in the future very soon.
I'll be back.
God bless. And folks, that wraps up the first hour of the Rock Newman Show. Thanks for your rapt attention. We'll be back in just a few moments.